You are not holding a novel or a survival guide. What you have before you is a bleak chronicle of human helplessness. There are no heroes here, no one to be saved, no room for happiness. All that awaits you on these pages is a slow, dirty, hopeless death at the roadside of history. You are a wandering apothecary. Every day is an attempt to survive in a world where no one expects help, where disease is stronger than hope, where the mark of the outsider is always heavier than any healing powder. Prepare to discover just how dark and meaningless medieval life could really be. If you believed the past smelled only of bread and herbs, this story will crush your illusions as slowly and brutally as the road crushes your feet. But before you settle in, please like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you are watching from and what time it is where you are. I am really curious to see who has joined us. Now, make yourself comfortable. We are about to begin. You stand at a crossroads, your shoes caked with mud, the sweat on your brow clinging to your matted hair. The wind pulls at your tattered cloak as though trying to force you to turn back, but you're resolute. The road ahead is long, and you have little more than the weight of a pack slung over your shoulder and the remnants of hope that still cling to your heart. The sky is a dull gray, and the air feels heavy with the weight of the journey you've chosen. The world around you is still and silent, the land stretching endlessly in front of you. No sign of life except the occasional rustling of leaves in the trees. The horizon is a thin line of muted color, fading into the distance where some far-off village might lie. You've made this decision, this choice, to walk the path of a traveling apothecary. It's a road that promises nothing but hardship and pain, but it's also the only road you've got left. Your hands are stiff from the long journey you've already made. You've walked for days through endless countryside, each step taking you farther from the life you once knew. The weight of your pack is starting to press against your shoulders, but you don't stop. You can't. There's no turning back. The road behind you is as empty as the one ahead, and though you may not have been sure about this path when you first chose it, now you know there's nothing else. You've learned quickly that this is not a noble trade. It's not one of glory or fortune. The term apothecary is often romanticized, made to sound like a calling. But you've discovered the truth. It's hard work, it's a grind, and most days it's a thankless job. The people you meet don't care about your skills, your knowledge of rare herbs, or the potions you've learned to brew. They care about whether or not you can make their illness go away, whether or not they can afford your services. The weight of their gaze often feels like an accusation. You know they're thinking, what's the point? Why even try? But still, you try. That's all you can do. You take a deep breath, your breath catching in your throat as the cold air cuts through your ragged clothes. You've been walking for hours, and though your body is aching, you press forward. Each day is the same tired walk, the same miserable landscape. It doesn't matter how much you want to rest or how much you long for a warm bed. This is is the life you've chosen. After what feels like an eternity, a small village comes into view on the horizon. It's a dot at first, just a smudge of movement in the distance, but as you draw closer, it becomes clearer. The thatched roofs of cottages appear, the crooked smoke rising from the chimneys, and the faint sounds of life, voices, laughter, and the faint clink of metal from a blacksmith's forge. You don't expect much from this village. Most of the settlements you've passed through have been like this: isolated, rural, poor. The people here don't have much. The markets are sparse, the food is even sparser, and the health of the villagers is usually neglected. That's where you come in. You've traveled with your supplies: dried herbs, potions, powders, and elixirs, all the things you can carry on your back, hoping they will be enough to make a living. But you know better than to expect gratitude from the people. You've learned that no one trusts an outsider, especially one with strange potions and remedies. As you enter the village, your eyes scan the faces around you. Most of them are hunched over with age, or young and tired, their faces weathered from the hard life they lead. You can see the sickness in their eyes, the dullness that comes from years of struggle, from the constant fight for survival. You're not sure if you can help them, but you must try. There's no other choice. You pause near the village square, and your eyes are drawn to a small gathering of people. There's an elderly woman at the center, her face drawn and pale. She seems to be in distress, clutching her chest as if gasping for breath. A young man stands next to her, trying to comfort her, but he looks as though he doesn't know what to do. The crowd around them murmurs, a collection of voices, all offering advice that makes no sense. Give her some water, one suggests. Let her rest, another adds. But no one offers anything useful. You know this illness. It's a common one, something that's swept through many villages before. A weak heart, likely exacerbated by years of poor diet and heavy labor. There's little you can do, but perhaps a tincture or an infusion of herbs might help, even if it's only temporary relief. But the question is, will they accept it? You step forward, your heart racing. The people fall silent, their eyes narrowing as they take you in. The young man glances at you, his gaze wary, and the elderly woman looks up with suspicion. You can feel their hesitation. They've seen plenty of people come and go, promising cures and offering potions that never work. I have medicine, you say, your voice quiet but steady. I can help her. The crowd is silent for a moment before the young man steps forward, his voice hesitant. What kind of medicine? Who are you? I am an apothecary, you reply. I travel, offering remedies to those in need. This woman's condition is not uncommon, but I may be able to ease her pain. The villagers exchange uneasy glances. We've heard it all before, one of them mutters. How do we know you're not just another fraud? You take a step closer to the elderly woman, your hand outstretched, offering the vial of medicine you've prepared. I can't promise miracles, but I can promise I'll do what I can. The young man looks at you, his eyes filled with doubt, but he nods slowly, stepping aside so you can approach the woman. The air is thick with uncertainty as you open the vial and begin to prepare the tincture. As you work, the murmurs of the crowd continue. The distrust is palpable. You've seen it before. People are hesitant, scared, and too often desperate. But still, you press on for them, for her, and for yourself. The elderly woman drinks the tincture. She doesn't seem to notice much at first, but after a few moments, she exhales deeply, her breath less ragged. Her eyes, once clouded with discomfort, seem to clear slightly. It's not a cure, but for now, it's something. The crowd watches, still unsure, but there's a flicker of hope. The young man turns to you, his face softening. "Thank you," he says quietly, though it's clear that he doesn't quite trust you yet. You nod, silently, feeling the weight of his gaze. You know this isn't over. This is only the beginning of a journey that will lead you into the depths of hardship and doubt. But for now, you've made a small difference. That's enough to keep you moving forward, even if the road ahead is uncertain. Morning arrives with all the subtlety of a blow to the head. There is no rooster crowing, no gentle dawn chorus, just the thick fog creeping through the window cracks, carrying with it the stench of damp earth, rotting straw, and your own unwashed body. You are grateful, in a bleak sort of way, that nobody has thrown you out during the night. You spent your first night in the village on a bundle of moldy hay inside an abandoned shed, grateful for the privilege of lying horizontal. Your dreams, if you can call them dreams, were filled with visions of mud, sickness, and endless walking. You rise, joints aching, stomach grumbling with that familiar, gnawing emptiness that passes for hunger. The air inside the shed is so thick with mildew that you feel you might choke if you stay another minute. Your first action is to roll up the ragged mat that served as your bed, sling your satchel across your back, and step outside. The world is gray, soaked and sagging under its own misery. Nobody greets you. The villagers are already awake, bustling about their joyless routines, hauling water, tending thin goats, scraping frost from their crude tools. They glance at you, but their faces remain blank, as if acknowledging your existence would cost them something precious. You pick your way across the village square, careful not to slip in the muck. The mud is an omnipresent feature of your new existence, sticky, sucking at your shoes, eager to drag you down and swallow you whole. Every step is an effort. You wonder if you will ever get used to it, or if you will one day simply surrender and let the earth consume you. Your mind returns to the events of the previous evening. You recall the old woman you tried to help. The tincture you gave her was little more than a mixture of valerian and willow bark. No miracle cure, just enough to dull her pain for a few hours. You know, deep down, that she will not last much longer. There are limits to what plants and powders can achieve, especially when the underlying problem is a lifetime of poverty and neglect. Still, you did what you could. You did what was expected. A cold wind whips across the square, carrying with it the scents of manure and burning peat. You wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders and consider your next move. The villagers do not seem interested in your services. Perhaps, if you lingered, you could make a few coins here and there, treating minor cuts, colds, and the endless parade of festering boils. But you know you cannot afford to stay. In a place like this, even the smallest suspicion can turn ugly. The people are hungry, superstitious, and desperate. A stranger who dabbles in powders and potions is only welcome until something goes wrong. Then, the crowd that watched you with curiosity might just as easily become a mob. You slip out of the village without ceremony, leaving behind the broken fences and muddy lanes. The road ahead is less a road than a suggestion, a winding path of churned earth, bordered by thorns and gnarled trees. Your boots are already soaked through, your toes numb. Every step is an exercise in endurance. You make a mental note of every root, every stone, every puddle that might trip you up or twist your ankle. The country is not beautiful. It is harsh, unyielding, and indifferent to your suffering. The hours pass slowly, marked only by the changing quality of light and the deepening ache in your back. You try to distract yourself by cataloging the contents of your satchel. There are your usual supplies, bundles of dried herbs, yarrow, mugwort, nettle, tucked away in oiled cloth, glass vials of colored liquids, packets of powdered roots and barks, each carefully labeled in your own cramped hand. There are also a few precious items: opium resin wrapped in a scrap of linen, a bottle of quicksilver you are not entirely sure is safe to carry, and your last two silver coins. These are your treasures, your tools, your livelihood, and your last line of defense against starvation. As you walk, you rehearse your lines, the words you will use to win the trust of the next village. You practice your smile in the cold air, but your lips barely remember how to form one. You know you must appear confident, knowledgeable, even friendly, no matter how hollow you feel inside. The truth is, you are just as frightened as the people you serve. You fear sickness, hunger, and the ever present threat of violence. You fear that one day your luck will run out and you will become just another nameless corpse by the roadside. The sky remains sullen, pressing down on you with its weight. By midday, your stomach is twisting with hunger. You stop to chew on a crust of bread so hard it might as well be wood. There is no cheese, no meat. Those are luxuries you have not tasted in weeks. The bread is stale, and you are forced to wash it down with a mouthful of bitter, metallic water from your flask. You savor the moment, knowing it might be the last food you taste today. You see few signs of life along the road. A pair of ragged children dart behind a hedge as you approach, their eyes wide with suspicion. Further on, you pass the burned out shell of a farmhouse, its charred beams jutting skyward like the bones of some long dead beast. Here and there, you find remnants of old camps, blackened fire pits, bits of broken pottery, the occasional ragged shoe. Every sign is a reminder that you are not the first, nor will you be the last. to tread this path. By late afternoon, the road begins to rise, climbing into low, forested hills. The air grows colder, and the trees close in around you, casting long, skeletal shadows across the ground. The light is fading fast. You know you must find shelter soon, but there is no inn, no welcoming hearth, not even an abandoned barn. Your options are limited to sleeping beneath the trees or pressing on in the hope of finding a village before dark. You press on. The ground is treacherous, roots and rocks hidden beneath a carpet of dead leaves. Every sound sets your nerves on edge: the snap of a twig, the rustle of wings, the distant howl of a wolf. You clutch your satchel tighter, as though its meager contents could protect you from the darkness. Your breath comes in sharp, shallow gasps. You do not believe in monsters, but you know that real dangers walk these woods: bandits, wild dogs, and desperate men who would kill for a few coins. At last, just as the sky bleeds its final light, you catch sight of smoke rising above the trees. You force your aching legs to move faster, stumbling into a clearing where a small fire burns. A family huddles around it, their faces wary but not unfriendly. You introduce yourself, your voice hoarse with fatigue. They regard you with the same mixture of suspicion and curiosity you have come to expect. "I am an apothecary," you say, forcing a smile. "May I share your fire for the night?" They say nothing at first, but the father, a thin, grim man with a scar down one cheek, gestures to a spot near the flames. You lower yourself to the ground, feeling the warmth seep into your bones. For a moment, you allow yourself to relax. You listen to the quiet sounds of the forest, the crackle of the fire, the soft breathing of the children. As darkness falls, you realize this is as close to comfort as you are likely to get. Tomorrow will bring more walking, more hunger, more mud, and more suspicion. For now, you are simply grateful to be alive. Sleep comes slowly, uneasy, and filled with dreams of sickness and wandering. You cling to the hope that tomorrow you might find a place where your skills are valued, where you are not merely tolerated, but needed. But hope, like everything else on the road, is in short supply. You awaken before sunrise, eyelids sticky, mouth dry and foul tasting, back stiff from the root that pressed into your side all night. The family around the campfire is already packing up. No words are exchanged, not even a nod. That is the law of the road. Share warmth when it is dark. Ignore one another as soon as dawn peels away the safety of night. You scrape the mud off your boots with a stick and resume your march. Your destination, another nameless dot on the map, another huddle of roofs and crooked fences. You hope this village will be less hostile than the last, but you know hope is a luxury best left to the naive. The land shifts from dense forest to open, rutted track. Birds call, but you cannot tell if it is greeting or warning. The mist clings to your cloak and soaks your hair. After what feels like hours of silent trudging, the outline of a village emerges from the fog. The place has the look of somewhere that has been here for centuries and will remain long after you are gone, though the wooden houses seem to teeter on the edge of collapse. The roofs sag, the fences lean drunkenly. Even the dogs, thin and mangy, bark with the resigned tone of animals who have long ago given up on chasing strangers. The first human you encounter is an old man with a face so deeply lined it seems as if the skin itself is trying to escape the skull beneath. He watches you pass with pale suspicion, making the sign against evil. You keep your eyes down, mutter the polite greeting, and walk on. In the village square, you find a scene so depressingly familiar that you could almost believe you have circled back to yesterday. A handful of peasants cluster near a communal well, passing news and rumors in voices that never quite rise above a nervous murmur. You set up near the well, arranging your battered wares with a practiced flourish that is meant to suggest confidence. You hope the villagers will come to you, but they mostly stare, whisper, and shuffle away. It is not until a sharp cry splits the morning air that you attract attention. The cry comes from a nearby hut, and within moments, a knot of villagers gathers at the threshold. You are drawn by both curiosity and the faint possibility of earning a meal. Inside, the air is thick with the smells of sweat, sickness, and smoke. A woman lies on a crude bed, her face flushed and her breathing rapid. Next to her sits a child, no more than 6 or 7, hacking with a deep, rattling cough. You assess the situation. The child is thin, skin stretched over bones, eyes sunken. The mother's expression is one of dull resignation, as if this is just one more trial in a life composed entirely of trials. The villagers part to let you through, their eyes full of both suspicion and desperate hope, an intoxicating mixture. You kneel by the child, hands working methodically as you examine the swollen glands, feel the fevered brow, note the foul stench of illness. You recognize the symptoms: a common fever, likely worsened by cold, hunger, and filth. The solution is obvious, at least to you, though you know that nothing is simple here. You reach into your bag for dried elderflower and a vial of vinegar, whispering instructions to boil water, though you can see from their faces that boiling sir is a luxury rarely afforded in this place. You brew a weak tea, the child too weak to protest the bitter taste. The villagers watch in silence, as if expecting something dramatic: a flash of light, a miracle, a resurrection, when all you offer is a sip of hot liquid and a rag soaked in vinegar for the child's forehead. You can feel the disappointment curdle in the air. One woman, the child's aunt perhaps, leans in and hisses, "Is that all you have? Where are your miracles?" You smile, but only with your lips. "I am not a priest. I work with what the world gives us: elderflower and vinegar. They will ease the fever. That is the best I can offer." The mother nods, accepting the news as if it is another stone in her pocket. You leave the hut, your hands now reeking of sickness, your soul a little heavier than before. Back at your makeshift stall, You discover your audience has grown. Word travels quickly in places like this. You are soon approached by another villager, this one clutching a young girl by the wrist. The girl is limping, her ankle swollen and purple. A simple sprain, you think, and you offer her a poultice of comfrey and a splint made from a whittled stick. There is no gratitude, only a grunt and a single turnip handed over in payment. You take it because you must. As the morning wears on, you treat cuts, boils, and the ever present lice infestations. A man demands something for his wife's nerves, and you hand him a pouch of dried valerian. He eyes you with a look that is equal parts hope and accusation. In this world, there are no happy endings, just slightly less miserable middles. Between patients, you listen to the gossip. You hear tales of a strange illness sweeping nearby farms, livestock dying, rumors of witches in the woods, and of course, the usual complaints about taxes, hunger, and the weather. You are careful not to say too much. An apothecary who talks too freely is a short step from an apothecary accused of sorcery. Your stomach growls, and you eat the raw turnip in 3 bites. It is woody and bitter, but it fills a corner of the endless hunger gnawing at you. No one offers you more. Hospitality is in short supply, and your presence is tolerated only as long as you are useful. By midday, the novelty of your arrival has faded. The villagers drift away, called to other duties. You are left alone, picking mud from under your fingernails, wondering how many days you can survive on turnips and gratitude. You consider moving on, but your legs are heavy, and the thought of another night in the cold is less appealing than the sullen glances of these villagers. As you sit, a child approaches, a different one, thin as a rail, eyes enormous in a hollow face. "Can you make my sister better?" he asks. His voice is so quiet you barely hear it. You want to lie. You want to say yes. Of course, you can cure anyone, heal anything. But you know better. You kneel to his level and answer him honestly, as you wish someone had answered you when you were a child. "I will do what I can," you say. It is not a promise. It is all you have. And so the day drags on, a relentless tide of sickness, suspicion, and disappointment. By evening, you have nothing left to offer but your silence. You sleep that night in a stable, sharing straw with a coughing goat. You stare at the rafters and count your failures. Outside, the wind moans. You wonder if it is mourning the dead or just mocking the living. You awaken in the stables before the sun, the memory of coughing goats and the acrid sting of manure sharp in your nose and hair. Your throat is raw, your muscles stiff. There is a trickle of straw dust caught in your eyelashes, and for a few disoriented moments, you believe yourself to be a beast of burden rather than a man. The illusion shatters when your stomach rumbles, reminding you that you are still painfully, pitifully human. Outside, the village stirs, already a hive of bleak, repetitive activity. The night has done nothing to soothe the villagers' suspicions, nor yours. You gather your belongings, check your pouch for the meager offerings paid in turnips and crusts, and offer a silent, useless prayer for a day without calamity. You know better than to expect such things, but old habits die hard, and desperation breeds superstition in even the most rational of minds. You have barely stepped out onto the rutted track leading away from the village when you feel it, the prickling at the back of your neck, that subtle tightening in your chest. The road is not empty. A trio of men, rough looking and haphazardly armed with cudgels and makeshift knives, are waiting just beyond the final fence. Their faces are hard, jaws set against a world that offers them little more than hunger and scorn. You recognize the look. You see it every morning in your own reflection when you catch sight of yourself in still water. They call out to you, voices low and unfriendly, and you realize you are being sized up like a pig at market. You keep your face neutral and your posture non threatening. You know from long, bitter experience that fear is not the correct response. Fear excites the desperate and emboldens the cruel. Well, well, the largest man says, stepping into your path. And what are you carrying, friend? You recognize the tone, the forced politeness of someone who is considering robbing you, but is giving you one last chance to amuse him. Only a bag of roots and a few stale crusts, you reply, letting your weariness seep into your words. You look them each in the eye, not long enough to challenge, but not so brief as to signal submission. The game is as old as the road itself. The second man, a wiry youth with a nose that looks as though it has been broken more times than it has been straight, snorts. Roots, eh? Bet you got something better than that, don't you, apothecary? The third man, silent and blank eyed, only stares, his hand twitching near his belt. You keep your voice flat. You can search me if you wish, but I promise you, you will find nothing but medicine. If you're sick, I can help. If you're hungry, all I have is a turnip and a crust. Take them. But if you're looking for coin, I have none to give. You do not mention the two precious silver coins hidden in your boot. You never mention those. For a moment, the three seem uncertain. You have learned to recognize this hesitation, the moment when your very lack of worth is what saves you. You are not worth killing, not worth robbing. You are not even worth despising. You are just another shadow drifting through their miserable world. After a tense silence, the first man laughs, a short, ugly bark. Keep your turnip, doctor. You'll need it more than we will. The others laugh as well, and the spell is broken. They step aside, and you walk on, your heart pounding so loudly you are certain they can hear it. You do not look back. You keep to the road, though you know that roads are dangerous places. The sun climbs higher, offering no warmth, only an indifferent glare that makes your head ache. You try to keep a brisk pace, but your legs are heavy, and your mind is occupied with the encounter. You consider, not for the first time, how close you came to losing everything, how easily the difference between life and death can come down to a single misplaced word or a glance or the simple fact of not being worth the trouble. As the day wears on, you are joined by other travelers, a farmer leading a pair of exhausted oxen, a widow and her ragged children moving silently towards some other hope, another apothecary with the haunted look of a man who has seen too much. The road is a river of misery, and you are only one drop in its endless current. The landscape offers no comfort. The fields are muddy and pockmarked, the forests dark and forbidding. Every now and then, you see evidence of violence, broken carts, abandoned bundles, a smear of blood that tells a story you do not want to know. There are tales of worse things, of men who disappear into the woods and never return, of children snatched by things best not named. You pretend not to believe in such stories, but at night you sleep with a stone in your fist, just in case. By late afternoon, the wind picks up, lashing your face with grit and dried leaves. You pull your cloak tighter and press on. Your feet ache, your shoulders burn from the weight of your satchel. You feel as if the road is trying to break you down into your component parts, mud, bone, and despair. You meet no one else for hours, and the loneliness begins to eat at you. You think about the men from the morning, about the villagers, about the endless procession of faces that flicker past and then vanish, leaving you only with the memory of their sickness, their suspicion, their indifference. You wonder, not for the first time, what difference you have made, what use your trade is in a world that seems intent on grinding itself into dust. Night comes too soon. The cold seeps in, and you are forced to seek shelter under a fallen tree, using your cloak as a thin barrier against the damp earth. You eat the last of your bread, chewing each mouthful until it is nothing but tasteless mush. Sleep is fitful. You wake at every sound, a snapping twig, the distant howl of a wolf, the rustling of unseen creatures in the dark. You dream of cities you have never seen, of warm rooms and full bellies, of laughter and safety. You wake to the smell of rot and the certainty that none of those things will ever be yours. At dawn, you rise, brush the dirt from your clothes, and continue on. The dangers of the road are behind you, for now. Ahead lies another village, another day, another opportunity to fail. You move forward, because moving forward is the only thing left. You survive another day, but survival is a low bar. The road, with all its threats, has not killed you, but it has certainly tried. When evening comes, the light fading into a smear of dirty orange, behind black trees, your thoughts turn obsessively toward shelter. You dream of a dry place to sleep, though you would settle for less. A roof, even a hole in the wall. You limp into the outskirts of a hamlet as the last bird calls echo, the sun already half buried under the horizon. This is no prosperous town. The houses are mostly shacks, built of split logs and moss, crooked and half collapsed from too many seasons of rain. Some have doors that hang from one hinge, others are doorless, ragged blankets or planks serving instead. The ground is thick with mud. Your boots sink with every step, and you curse yourself for not leaving the road earlier in hopes of a better place. But there is no better place. Not for people like you, not for most people at all. You pause at the edge, weighing your options. You could try to sleep outside, risk hypothermia, the attention of wild dogs, or the local children who might find sport in tormenting a stranger. Or you could approach the inhabitants and beg for a spot in some corner, trading your skills for straw and shelter. You do not bother pretending you have pride. You lost that long ago. You settle for the middle course. You find a hut that looks half abandoned, the door ajar, and knock quietly. Silence. You push the door open. The inside is worse than you imagined. A dirt floor, straw scattered in what might once have been an attempt at bedding, a single rickety stool, a fireplace choked with soot and cold ashes. The only decoration is a cluster of dead flies in the corner and a sour stench that suggests something has died nearby, if not here. You look around, your eyes adjusting to the gloom. On the far side of the hut is a pile of rags. A pair of eyes opens within it. An old woman, skin drawn tight as parchment over bone, watches you without expression. For a moment, you simply stare at each other. I need a place to sleep, you say quietly, not quite a question, not quite a demand. The woman grunts. Ain't much to steal here, and less to share. I am an apothecary, you say, as if the word means something. I can pay medicine. Maybe you need something? She shrugs, a gesture of complete indifference, not resignation or hostility. You're welcome to the floor. Don't expect no food. The rats take what I leave. She closes her eyes again. You set your bag by the wall, careful not to crush any of your precious, useless herbs. You feel your way around the room, prodding the straw for dry patches. There are none. You take off your cloak and use it as a makeshift pillow, pulling your knees to your chest for warmth. Darkness descends. Through the walls, you hear the sounds of other lives, low voices arguing, a baby crying, the sharp metallic cough of a sick child, the clatter of pots. The old woman snores softly, her breaths thin and rattling. You close your eyes, but sleep will not come. You try to count the days since you last felt truly safe, or warm, or full. The numbers escape you. Instead, your mind drifts to your trade. You think of all the things you know: how to bind wounds, how to ease fever, how to brew a poultice for swelling, how to make a man sleep even when grief and hunger gnaw at him. It would be a comfort if your knowledge mattered, you know, in your bones, that it does not. Not really. These people are too poor to buy your powders, too tired to believe in your potions. Even if they did, what would it change? What good is willow bark or poppy syrup against a lifetime of mud and toil? A rat scurries across your foot. You do not move. There is nothing left to be startled by. The old woman coughs, a wet, shuddering sound that suggests her lungs are half full of water. You could offer her something, time for the cough, honey if you had it, but she would not take it. She would likely say, as so many others have, better to let it kill me quickly. You close your eyes tighter, willing yourself to forget her, to forget everyone. A loud noise outside, the heavy slam of something wooden, voices raised in anger. You sit up, heart thudding, but nobody comes to your door. The village sleeps poorly, on the edge of fear, everyone guarding what little they have from each other. You realize you are as much a threat as a guest, another mouth to feed, another stranger who might take more than he gives. The night is endless. Each hour brings a new discomfort. The straw prickles your skin, the cold gnaws at your bones, your stomach aches. You listen to your own breath, hoping it will lull you, but it only reminds you that you are still alive. Eventually, exhaustion conquers your fear, and you slip into a shallow, uneasy sleep. You dream of better places, impossible ones, really. Inns with warm fires, meals of fresh bread and cheese, laughter and wine. You dream of being wanted, of someone calling you doctor and meaning it. When you wake, your face is wet, and you do not know if it is sweat or tears. Dawn comes, gray and pitiless. The old woman is gone. You do not know if she left or simply died in the night. You feel a brief flicker of guilt, but quickly bury it. There is no room for softness, not out here. You rise, stretch your cramped limbs, and pack your bag. You step outside to find the village already stirring. Children run through the mud, their faces filthy and shining with snot. A woman pours out the contents of a chamber pot, and the stench is carried on the morning breeze. A man squats nearby, examining his feet, which are cracked and bleeding. You approach him out of habit, offer him a smear of ointment for the sores. He grunts, not unkindly, and tosses you a shriveled apple in thanks. This is what passes for success: a night under a roof, a rotten apple for medicine, and a day not yet claimed by sickness or violence. You move on because moving on is all you have. Each night you promise yourself it cannot get worse. Each morning you are proven wrong. The road eventually delivers you to what passes, in these times, for civilization. A walled town, one of those sullen lumps on the landscape where the desperate masses try to huddle together for warmth, security, and the faint hope that the world's horrors are slightly less horrifying when you are surrounded by others who share your fate. As you approach, the rutted track turns to something like a street, although it is still more mud than cobble, and the first greeting you receive is not a welcome, but a suspicious glare from a guard leaning on a pike. You give your name, an apothecary's name, neither remarkable nor entirely your own, and show the worn satchel of herbs, bottles, and unremarkable powders. The guard's eyes are dead with boredom. He waves you through, only after making you stand in a puddle so his dog can sniff your ankles for contraband. You do not ask what happens to those who are found wanting. You do not need to know. Inside the walls, the city stinks. It stinks of rotting food and old urine, sour wine and cheap tallow, horses, wet wool, and unwashed bodies. It is a carnival of filth, and yet, compared to the villages, it has its charms. There are more faces, and that means more illness, more coins, and that means a little more hope. For the right kind of merchant, one less scrupulous than you, the city is a paradise of pain and profit. You set up your stall in the shadow of the market square, at the edge where the pigs and beggars outnumber the bakers and butchers. There is no official permission, but the city authorities are less concerned with order than with making sure the right palms are greased. You keep a small stash of copper coins in your sleeve, the price of being left alone, and you learn to offer them before being asked. A nod here, a glance there, and the city's hierarchy accepts you as part of its living detritus. The market is a cacophony of sound. Merchants shout their wares: onions, eels, tallow, dubious pies. The air rings with the cries of children and the bark of dogs. Your voice, when you hawk your goods, barely rises above a mumble. There is little point in shouting. You are not selling salvation, only small hope in dusty bottles. Most pass by without a glance, intent on their own meager bargains. But some stop, drawn by curiosity, desperation, or simply a need to fill the emptiness of a day with any kind of transaction. Your first customer is a woman with sunken cheeks and eyes like two dark pits. She asks, without preamble, "You got anything for pain?" You recognize the look. Someone who has been living on the edge of agony for so long that the idea of a single night's rest seems like a miracle. You offer her willow bark, the universal panacea for pain among those who cannot afford the real thing. You tell her to steep it in water and drink. She asks if it works. You shrug, unwilling to lie. Sometimes she gives you 2 copper coins, then presses you for something stronger. You consider the little lump of poppy resin in your bag, the kind of thing that could bring real relief or kill if misused. But you know you will need it yourself. Before long, you tell her no, and she moves on, disappointed but unsurprised. Other customers follow: a stooped man with a face riddled with boils, a mother whose child coughs and spits blood, an apprentice blacksmith with a festering burn on his arm. You treat what you can, take what payment you are given. Sometimes it is a few coppers, sometimes a hunk of bread, sometimes nothing at all, but a muttered word of thanks that leaves you poorer than before. At midday, a minor official approaches, a clerk or scribe. By his ink-stained hands and weary scowl, he tells you, without any warmth, that you must pay the market fee or pack up and leave. You pay. The price is nearly half of what you have earned that morning. You watch your profit vanish, and you wonder why you even bother. The city's market has its own dangers. It is not the wolves and bandits of the open road, but something slower, more corrosive. There are pickpockets and beggars, true, but there are also rival apothecaries, men and women who peddle colored water and snake oil, who are happy to spread rumors that your wares cause blindness, impotence, or worse. There are even physicians, well dressed charlatans with Latin on their tongues and blood on their hands, who will bleed a man white before admitting ignorance. You keep your head down, endure the jibes and the side eye, and watch as the day dissolves into a constant drizzle. Rainwater runs from the rooftops in filthy streams. The ground becomes a sucking morass of mud and refuse, the stink rising as the city's detritus churns underfoot. You are soaked through, your shoes ruined, your stock growing damp and useless. You cannot help but think of the countryside, of the cold comfort of straw and silence, and wonder if you are a fool for having ever left it. As dusk creeps over the city, the market begins to empty. Those with homes scuttle back to them, those without find shelter where they can. Doorways, alleyways, the shadowed corners under bridges. You pack your bag, counting what little you have earned, and seek out a place to sleep. There are inns, of course, but you have neither the coin nor the desire to share a flea ridden pallet with drunkards and thieves. Instead, you find a sheltered alcove behind a tannery. Its stink so strong that it drives away even the most persistent vermin. You wrap yourself in your cloak, your stomach growling, and try to sleep. You dream, as always, of things you cannot have, of meals, of warmth, of an end to the gnawing ache in your chest that you once called hope. You awaken before dawn, sore and chilled, your fingers numb, your body already preparing for another day of disappointment. The city stirs, and so do you, because there is nothing else to do. By the time you are again in the market square, your hopes have shrunk to fit the shape of your trade. There will be more sick people, more pain, more disappointment. If you are lucky, you will make enough to buy stale bread. If you are unlucky, you will be chased off by a rival or accused by some suffering wretch of making things worse, not better. You have no illusions left, only a stubborn persistence that compels you to try again, to sell one more bitter powder, to offer one more useless cure. It is not hope, not any more. It is just what you do, and it is enough for now to keep you alive. There are cities that dazzle with light, that tempt the weary traveler with stories of gold and warm beds. This is not such a city. Here, in the shadows of its battered walls, you begin to realize that the city's promise, whatever it once was, has long since drowned in filth. No matter where you walk, the stench is there, an invisible, inescapable miasma that clings to your skin, hair, and tongue. It is the city's most honest welcome, and it is never withdrawn. The odors do not blend or soften with time. They multiply, each competing for your attention. The acidic reek of horse urine pooled in the gutters. The overripe sweetness of rotting fruit slumping on the market carts. The sour tang of unwashed bodies packed close in narrow lanes. When the wind shifts, it brings a new parade of horrors, rendered fat from the tanners, the rank gurgle from the butcher's offal pit, the unmistakable ammonia of night soil dumped, as always, right under your nose. You quickly learn to breathe through your mouth, but the taste is worse. It coats your tongue, sticks in your throat, makes even the memory of fresh air seem fanciful. There is no escape, except perhaps in sleep. But even sleep is an enemy here, haunted as it is by the city's stink, which chases you into your dreams so that you wake in the night choking and half believing yourself to be buried alive. The market is the epicenter of the city's disease. The cobblestones are greasy with a century of spilled oil, trampled fish heads, and things no one can name. Here you hawk your wares with little enthusiasm. You watch the parade of misery that passes for city life, beggars with ulcers rotting through their legs, children with sores weeping pus, women with bellies distended, not from pregnancy, but from hunger and parasites. They stare at your table of bottles and bundles, and you see the same question in every sunken eye. Does anything you carry actually work, or is it all just another flavor of disappointment? Sometimes you are called to the back alleys, summoned by a desperate whisper. There, in dim candlelight, you kneel beside a man who has not bathed in months, his breath sour with rot, his teeth black stubs. He lifts his shirt to show you a wound, raw, red, and alive with maggots. You do not flinch, you have seen worse. You clean it with vinegar and hope he does not die before you can leave. You pocket your payment, a chipped coin slick with grime, and flee the room, feeling the city's stink cling to your very soul. You become intimately familiar with the odors of decay. You smell the difference between a simple infection and the rot that comes before death. You know the scent of old blood and new, of gangrene, of the sweet, sickly perfume that follows when someone's bowels have burst inside them. You know the way sickness settles in a room, thickening the air so that even healthy lungs choke. Your own body is no better. No matter how often you try to wash, when you can find water not already fouled by refuse, your skin absorbs the city. You scratch your scalp, and dirt collects under your nails. Your hair clings to your head, greasy and limp. Your clothes, once a dull brown, are now a shifting tapestry of stains, each with a story best forgotten. The city dwellers do not notice, or rather, they have adapted so thoroughly to the stink that it is only when you catch the sharp, nervous glance of a newly arrived stranger that you remember how foul it all truly is. The city has wormed its way into their noses, dulled their senses, taught them to accept the unacceptable as merely part of life. One evening, as dusk falls and the air grows damp, you are summoned by a merchant whose wife has not left her bed in days. His house is one of the better ones, glass in the windows, a door that locks, a floor paved with actual stones. Yet inside, the air is thick with perfume and incense, an attempt to mask something worse. You step into her chamber and are nearly overcome by the sweetness of rot beneath the lavender oil. She lies there, skin pale as candle wax, her mouth parted in a grimace, the bed sheets yellowed from her sweat. You know at once what is wrong. There is nothing you can do. Her body is already lost to fever and infection, and your little jars of powder are as useful as hope itself. You mix a draught to ease her pain, murmur some comforting words, and let the merchant press silver into your palm, as if silver has any power over death. Outside, you retch into a drain, the smell following you even there. By now, your nose has become your tool and your torment. You know who will die by the way they smell. You know which houses to avoid, which alleys are dens of disease. You know when a child is too far gone just by standing at the threshold. There is no dignity in this, only grim efficiency. The only mercy you can offer is to help the dying sleep more deeply and hope their last breath is drawn before the city devours what is left of them. Sometimes you envy those who live on the outskirts, farmers who stink only of sweat and manure, or even the outcast lepers who shelter by the old mill. Their odors are honest, pure, and familiar, born of bodies and earth, not of the endless synthetic rot of city life. There are moments, few and far between, when a wind from the east blows through the city, bringing a scent of grass and distant rain. In those moments, you almost remember what it was to be clean, to breathe air that has not filtered through generations of suffering. You close your eyes, savor it, and then it is gone, chased away by the next cart of night soil dumped in the gutter, the next butcher's cart left to spoil in the sun. When you finally leave the city, your stock depleted, your purse only a little heavier, you carry the stink with you. No amount of scrubbing can remove it. It is inside you now, a souvenir of every alley, every bedchamber, every dying breath you have witnessed. You wonder if, when your time comes, someone will kneel at your bedside, wrinkle their nose, and know you are lost. For now, you trudge onward, chased not by wolves or men, but by the memory of unbearable odors, a constant reminder that the world, for people like you, will never be clean again. You do not leave the city behind. It clings to you in ways both obvious and invisible. But you must move on. Trade calls, and so does hunger. So you drift through the city's winding arteries, its streets, if such a dignified word can be applied to these open sewers where people live, work, and die. The city is a cacophony, a constant, bone deep assault on the senses. By now, you expect nothing less. There is a rhythm to city life, but it is not a comforting one. It is the rhythm of survival, the clash of tin cups, the shouted bargains, the barked orders, the clang of blacksmiths, the shrieks of geese, the barks of dogs, the ceaseless crying of infants. The stone and wood echo the sound of human misery. Every street is a funnel for noise, every courtyard a drum. There is no such thing as silence. You try in vain to focus on the hiss of your own breath, but the city swallows it, grinds it down to nothing. You find yourself pushed and jostled. The crowd is a living, breathing beast, and you are nothing more than a flea on its hide. Bodies press in from all sides, coarse hands, muddy boots, rag wrapped children darting between legs. Merchants thrust their wares at you, onions green with mold, eels that stare from their baskets with milky eyes, pies whose contents you wisely do not question. Beggars tug your sleeve, and pickpockets slip through the throng like fish. You keep a hand on your pouch, another on your satchel, all the while moving with the tide. The filth is relentless. Refuse clogs every gutter. Cabbage leaves, fish scales, bones, rags, dung, dead rats, buckets of waste slosh from open windows above, splattering into the street with a wet thud. You are not quick enough once, and a sticky torrent coats your shoulder. The laughter from above is harsh and humorless. You do not look up. You pass a row of houses, each leaning into the next, as if hoping to prop up their failing frames. The windows are smeared with grease and candle soot. The doors sag and creak, each bearing the marks of fists or boots or both. From within, you hear coughing, sobbing, shouting, the slap of flesh on flesh. This is not the tragedy of a single household, but the chorus of the entire block. At a crossroads, a fight has broken out. A thin, wild eyed man swinging a cudgel at a woman who is clutching a sack of what might be bread or might be stones. A crowd forms instantly, half jeering, half hungry for escalation. No one intervenes. You slip past, eyes down. You have learned that to witness suffering is to invite it into your own life. Compassion is a luxury, a weakness, something you cannot afford. Further along, you come to a market within a market, an unofficial bazaar sprawled across a vacant lot. Here, things are bartered that have no place in the main square. Cracked pots, chipped knives, rusted nails, bottles half filled with rainwater and hope. You pause, display your wares, and a few haggard souls drift over. Their ailments are as familiar as their faces are forgettable. Lice, boils, coughs that rattle deep in the chest. A boy with a twisted arm, a girl with a rash blooming across her cheeks. You sell them what you can: dried nettle, a stub of soap, a dab of ointment, and take in return whatever they can offer. Some days it is a coin, more often a handful of beans, a shriveled apple, or simply a muttered promise to pay you later. You know they will not. Overhead, the bells of the church toll, not in celebration, but in warning. Another body has been found in the river. The crowd hardly notices. Death is as common as mud, and both are inescapable. You try to find a place to sit, but every stone is wet, every doorstep guarded. You lean against a wall, your back pressed to rough wood, and watch as a parade of misery shuffles past. Men with scabbed hands, women with missing teeth, children with swollen bellies. Some cast you hopeful looks, as if you might offer salvation. Most look straight through you, already planning their next meal, their next bed, their next desperate gamble. The city does not care for you. It does not care for anyone. Here, you are only as valuable as your last sale, your last clever word, your last crumb of compassion. And when you have nothing left, The city will spit you out, just as it has spit out so many before. The streets grow more crowded as the day wanes. Candlelight flickers in windows. The scent of burning tallow and frying offal blends with the ever present stink. Somewhere, a musician plays a tune so melancholy that even the rats pause to listen. A group of children chant a skipping rhyme about the plague. You hear a mother call her son's name only to be swallowed by the noise. You make your way toward the outskirts, stepping over puddles that shimmer with oil and rot. A cart stuck in the mud blocks your path. Its owner curses, whips his mule, and curses again. No one offers help. You skirt around, shoes sinking ankle deep in muck. By nightfall, you have found a patch of ground that is less filthy than most, under the eaves of an abandoned tavern. You eat a piece of bread so hard it cracks your tooth, wash it down with water that tastes faintly of iron and ash, and watch as darkness swallows the city's chaos. Even now, the noise continues, the whimper of a sick child, the clash of bottles, the distant scream that no one will answer. You lie awake, staring into the blackness, your ears ringing with the city's ceaseless song. Somewhere out there, another apothecary is doing the same, watching, waiting, enduring. You wonder if their heart is as tired as yours, if they dream of quiet, of clean air, of a single night without fear. But you know better. You know that in this world, even sleep is loud and even dreams are dirty. There are moments when you remember the words of those who came before you, the apothecaries who managed to survive long enough to share their wisdom, or at least their warnings. You recall the weathered faces, the yellowed teeth, the hands stained with things no water could ever wash away. Their lessons were rarely gentle, their advice rarely optimistic. If they spoke of hope, it was only to remind you how dangerous it could be. You learned early on that knowledge is both armor and curse. You remember sitting in a smoky room, a cracked mug of something unidentifiable in your hands, while an old man with a broken nose and a voice like gravel explained the rules of survival. Never promise a cure, he rasped, wagging a finger that trembled from age or drink. You never knew which. Promise relief, promise sleep. A man will forgive you for not saving his wife, but he will never forgive you for giving him hope. You understood eventually that your craft is mostly ritual and theater, with only a pinch of true healing mixed in. The plants and powders, the tinctures and poultices, they help sometimes. More often, they do nothing, but you make a show of grinding and measuring, of whispering the names of roots and saints. You learned to look serious and competent, to nod at the right moments, to listen patiently as a customer lists the symptoms of a body ruined by work and worry. The patient expects to be believed, another elder once told you, even when you both know the truth. Sometimes you are called wise. Sometimes you are called a fraud. You have been called worse. You know enough to spot real danger when the boil on a man's neck is ready to burst into death, when the cough in a child's chest will become a grave before sunrise. You know to keep your head down when tempers run hot, when the village is looking for someone to blame for a run of bad luck. It is always the healer's fault, the old woman in the tattered shawl used to say. If you do nothing, you are a heartless wretch. If you try, you are a witch. You learned the importance of boundaries. You give advice, but not your whole heart. You offer remedies, but never yourself. You never stay in one place too long. The stories of the apothecaries who grew too comfortable are all the same. The first is gratitude, the second is expectation, the third is suspicion, and the fourth is fire. There are moments, of course, when you remember why you started. The hope, that dangerous hope that you could make a difference. You remember the first time you watched a fever break, the first child who stopped coughing, the first old man who could sleep through the night. For a while, you believed you were different, that you could outwit the world's cruelties with skill and care. The world taught you otherwise. Experience, it turns out, is mostly the accumulation of disappointments. You discover, day by day, the limits of your craft. You find that the same potion which brings relief to one will kill another. That poverty is a sickness for which there is no cure. That sometimes your best advice is not to take your medicine, but to eat, to sleep, to pray, luxuries that are out of reach for most. You become an expert in disappointment management. You master the art of the polite shake of the head, the gentle suggestion that maybe the saints will intercede where your dried nettles cannot. You learn to pack your things quickly when the crowd's mood shifts, to keep your face calm as threats are muttered, to keep your bag ready for the next village, the next disaster. Some nights you dream of the old apothecaries. You see them gathered in a smoky back room, passing a bottle, laughing at some joke you no longer understand. In the dream, their faces shift and blur, becoming the faces of all the people you could not help, all the bodies you have seen lowered into the ground. You wake up with the taste of ash in your mouth, the city's filth in your hair, and the memory of their warnings echoing in your head. You have kept their traditions alive. You save the last pinch of every rare herb, always assuming it will be needed most desperately the day after you use it. You never reveal everything you know. You always keep an exit in sight. When someone asks you for a miracle, you smile, shake your head, and tell them you only sell medicine. Still, the stories persist. In every town, there are whispers of a true healer, someone who once cured a child on the edge of death or brought sight to the blind. You know these stories. Sometimes you suspect. You have even started them, whether out of malice or mercy, you can no longer say. Hope is a dangerous thing, and the wisdom of the old apothecaries is to ration it carefully, like the last drops of oil in a lantern on a winter night. Yet sometimes you find yourself tempted. A child with bright eyes asks if you can make her mother well, and you feel the words on your tongue. Yes, of course, all will be well. You bite them back, swallow the lie, and instead offer a weak tea, a gentle touch, a whispered prayer. You know it is not enough, but you do it anyway, because the wisdom of the old apothecaries is survival, and the wisdom of the heart is sometimes just as foolish as it always was. On days when business is slow, you watch the crowds pass and you wonder which of the elders you have become, the cynic, the coward, the one who runs, or the one who stays too long. Maybe you think you are all of them at once. Maybe in the end, that is what it means to be an apothecary, to bear the weight of knowledge and still to walk on, knowing that wisdom rarely comforts and hope is just another word for hunger. You find yourself some cold and endless morning walking the muddy road out of another village. The sky is a dull pewter sheet. The fields are nothing but gray churn and brittle stubble. The only sounds are your own wet footsteps and the distant, muffled sob of a crow. The world is heavy, and so is the question gnawing at you, a question that has followed you like a stray dog since the day you took up your satchel. Why did you choose this path? Did you ever have a choice? Are you a healer or just another tradesman peddling false comfort to the desperate? You remember your beginnings, awkward, hopeful, ignorant. You remember believing that you could make a difference, that you would wander from town to town, healing wounds and easing suffering, a bringer of good in a world obsessed with cruelty. Perhaps, for a brief moment, you were an idealist. Perhaps you still are, somewhere beneath the grime and fatigue. But the world has ways of grinding ideals to dust, just as it does bones and hope. You have watched day after day as people come to you not with gratitude, but with suspicion, with bargaining, with anger barely held in check. They do not see a savior, they see a traitor, another stranger to be cheated, envied, or blamed. They see someone who will take their last coin and, in return, give them a promise as thin as soup made from boiled grass. If you let yourself think too much, you might hate them for it, but you cannot. You understand their hunger, their fear, the way their souls have become as threadbare as their shoes. You understand because you live in the same world. Their desperation is your desperation. Their disappointments echo your own. You see it in their eyes, the plea, the calculation, the unspoken hope that maybe, just this once, you might have the answer, the cure, the miracle. Yet you know the truth or think you do. You are not a miracle worker. You are a tradesman selling what little you know to keep yourself alive. You measure out powders and ointments, not because you believe they will save anyone, but because you have to eat. If your hands shake when you grind your herbs, it is not with the excitement of a holy calling, but from hunger and cold. You have learned to perform. The apothecary's work is part medicine, part theater. You bow your head, speak in a soft and steady voice, recite the names of herbs with the gravity of a priest at the altar. You ask questions, listen with a furrowed brow, murmur the appropriate platitudes. You do not smile unless you are certain it will not be mistaken for mockery. Your reputation, such as it is built on the illusion of certainty. Confidence sells remedies faster than honesty. Still, you are not a complete fraud. When you can help, you do. When a mother's child is feverish and gasping, You give what comfort you can, even if it is only a clean cloth and cool water. When an old man's joints ache, you offer willow bark tea and let him believe it is magic. When someone cannot pay, you sometimes give your wares away, though you always regret it later when you go to bed hungry. You have learned to bargain, to haggle, to assess a person's need not by the urgency of their pleas, but by the bulge of their purse or the calluses on their hands. You have become, if not hard, then at least practical. Altruism is a currency more rare than gold. It does not keep you warm, does not fill your belly, does not protect you from suspicion when a patient dies anyway and the crowd looks for someone to blame. There are times, late at night, when you think about what you could have been. Had the world been different, had you been born to more than a handful of coppers and a stomach that always seemed empty, you could have been a scholar, perhaps, in some stone walled city, learning the secrets of life and death from books rather than from corpses. You could have been a real doctor, one with a diploma and a patron, not just a wanderer with a bag of roots and a mouth full of careful words. But the world is not made for dreamers, and you have stopped dreaming. Most days, you are content just to survive. You make your way from one settlement to the next, measuring your success not in lives saved, but in days endured. You tell yourself that what you do matters, that your small acts of care are better than nothing, that you are not just another vulture picking at the bones of the poor. And yet, beneath the layers of cynicism, something of the old idealist remains. When you see a child's fever break, when you ease the pain of a dying woman, when someone thanks you with tears in their eyes, you feel a flicker of the thing you used to believe in. It is small, fragile, and easy to miss amid the noise and the filth, but it is there. You cling to that flicker, even as you sell powders you know will do little, even as you pocket coins that feel too heavy for what you have given in return. You wonder if that is hypocrisy or simply survival. One evening, you sit by the side of the road, watching the last embers of your fire die, and you try to tally the balance of your life. How many have you helped? How many have you failed? Are you a healer, a merchant, a parasite, or something in between? The fire gives no answer. Tomorrow you will rise, pack your bag, and become whoever the next village needs you to be, kind or cruel, honest or cunning, healer or tradesman. You will do what you must, as you always have. The world will not thank you, nor will it notice your passing, but you will go on, because you do not know how to do anything else. And in the quiet moments, when no one is looking, you will ask yourself, once again, why you chose this life. You will not find an answer, but you will walk on all the same. Once, you thought the city was as bad as life could get. You told yourself that nothing could be darker than a city's midnight, the cries from alleyways, the stink, the thick press of misery. Then you return to the road, and you remember darkness has layers, and the countryside is a well without bottom. The forest swallows you. The road is little more than two muddy ruts winding through trees that creak and groan like old men in pain. Branches crowd overhead, blotting out what little moonlight seeps through the clouds. The world becomes very small. Your own footsteps, your breath puffing white, the sound of something scuttling through leaves just out of sight. There are no lamps, no firelight, only the thin hope of your own weak lantern, its flame shuddering with every movement of the air. Every story you have ever heard about these woods returns to you. Wolves, certainly, but also men. Thieves who know the value of a full satchel, outlaws with nothing left to lose. Soldiers turn to banditry in the wake of failed harvests and endless war. They have learned what you are only just discovering, that the forest is more honest than the city. Here, there is no performance, no chance to sell comfort. The only bargains are made at the point of a knife, and the only comfort is the lie you tell yourself that you will reach the next village alive. You walk until your legs ache and your heart thumps against your ribs like a drum. Each time you stumble on a route, you imagine 100 eyes watching. Sometimes you pause, crouch, and listen, but the silence only grows thicker, heavy with the possibility of violence. The forest does not care about your trade. It does not care about your little satchel of medicines, your careful words, your clever hands. The forest cares only that you are small, and it is vast. Eventually, you must stop. There is no question of sleeping well, only of not dying before dawn. You choose a patch of earth, half hidden behind a fallen log, far from the road. You pile dead leaves to dull the cold. Your cloak is too thin, and your boots are damp, but you are too tired to care. You do not dare build a fire. The light would only call to things that are better left in the dark. Instead, you huddle and shiver, listening to the forest as it wakes for the night. The sounds are endless. The high, thin cry of an owl, the scratch of claws on bark, the distant, guttural bellow of something you hope never to meet. Every now and then, a branch snaps, close enough to make your heart race, far enough that you cannot be sure it was real. In the city, danger is noisy and predictable, a drunk's shout, the rush of feet. In the forest, it is patient, silent, relentless. You have, stashed at the bottom of your satchel, a few poppy seeds and a twist of dry leaf, enough to bring uneasy sleep if you dare. You consider it, rolling the little packet in your palm, but you do not take it. You cannot afford to wake groggy, slow, lost. Out here, slow means dead. So you stay awake or half awake, jumping at every shadow, whispering prayers you half remember from childhood. You are not a religious person, but the dark makes everyone a believer. You promise to any God who will listen that if you are spared until morning, you will do better. You will help more, take less, leave fewer wounds behind you. The forest listens, as always, and offers no reply. Somehow, the night passes. It always does. The world turns, even when you are sure it never will again. Dawn seeps into the trees, gray and clammy. Your back aches, your fingers are numb, your stomach clenched with cold and fear. You rise stiffly, brush dirt from your skin, and check your belongings. Everything is still there. You count this as a victory, though you do not feel victorious. You resume walking. The forest is no friendlier by daylight, but it is at least honest. Its dangers are clear, unmasked by the trappings of civilization. You come across a fox, its coat ragged and patchy, watching you with narrow suspicion. A flock of birds erupts from a thicket as you approach. Somewhere to your left, something large crashes through the underbrush. You keep your head down and walk faster. Later that day, you find evidence of less honest dangers. A cart, half smashed and overgrown with weeds, its contents long since looted. Shreds of clothing hanging from a branch, stained a dark color you do not care to examine too closely. These are warnings, not just of wolves and wild men, but of what happens to those who do not keep moving. By afternoon, you reach a clearing where the road is visible once more, a battered path leading towards the next village. The relief is real, but brief. The road, brings its own troubles. Here, you may trade one set of dangers for another, but you do not escape any of them. You have simply survived another night, paid the price in exhaustion and nerves. You do not forget the lessons of the forest. You keep your satchel close, your knife closer. You learn to sleep with one ear open, to trust nothing and no one. When you finally arrive at the edge of a new village, mud sucking at your boots and the smell of smoke in the air, you present yourself not as a savior, but as a man who has survived, barely, and who can offer, at best, a few cheap tricks against the larger darkness. The villagers look at you with the same mixture of suspicion and hope you have seen 1,000 times. You give them your well practiced speech. You smile, but not too widely. You promise, as always, only what you can deliver, pain dulled, fever cooled, nothing more. You have learned in the long nights of the forest that honesty is cheaper than hope and safer besides. But sometimes, as you lay out your wares, as the villagers gather around, you think of the forest behind you, the eyes in the dark, the snapping branches, the endless, honest silence. You remember the feeling of being utterly alone, and for a moment, you almost prefer it. Here, among people, you must pretend. Out there, you need only survive. The road stretches onward, and you with it, caught forever between the dangers of the forest and the demands of the world. You move on because you have no other choice. The night will come again, and with it, the darkness. But for now, there is work to be done and a day to be survived. The next village is little more than a cluster of mud and hope, perched at the edge of the forest like a scab that never heals. It looks the same as all the others, lean-to roofs slumping under their own weight, a single well surrounded by gossip, chickens scratching desperately at soil already stripped of worms. You are greeted, as always, by suspicion thinly veiled behind curiosity. An outsider and a stranger bearing bottles and powders is a rare spectacle, But you have learned that novelty quickly curdles into fear. You stake out a corner of the square and begin the routine. Lay out your wares, arrange your bottles so the sun might catch them, a trick for making even the dullest concoction look potent, and wait. At first, there are only glances from under headscarves, muttered speculation, and children who dare each other to touch your cloak. But before long, the sick begin to emerge, drawn by desperation and the vague memory of hope. This village has been visited by a new and mysterious affliction. You hear it before you see it, a strange croaking cough that echoes from behind closed shutters, a sound that makes even the birds quiet. When the sufferers appear, they are gaunt and glassy eyed, their skin sallow, lips stained with bile. You ask your questions, perform your examinations. The answers are always the same. It started as a chill, then came the cough, then the swelling. Some have rashes like spilled wine along their ribs. Others shiver even as sweat beads on their foreheads. You do not recognize the pattern. It is not the ague, not the pox, not any of the dozens of ills that fill your battered notebook. You try to hide your uncertainty, but the villagers sense it. Their stares sharpen. Fear is a keen observer, always searching for weakness. You recommend what you can: infusions of elderflower, compresses of vinegar, simple stews for strength. You give away more than you sell, trading herbs for rumors, medicines for silence. You hear tales of a traveler who died in the next village, his body swollen and blue before the sun was high. Others speak of animals, goats that foam at the mouth, chickens that stagger in circles. The village priest mutters about curses, about punishment for sins unnamed. A grandmother insists it is the work of a witch in the woods. You know these stories, and you know how quickly blame can shift. One day you are a healer, the next, the cause of all suffering. You keep your head down, your words careful. Rest, warmth, patience. Let the fever break if it will. Inside, you feel helpless, and that is the most dangerous feeling of all. The days pass in a haze of misery. Each morning brings a new patient, and each night brings another funeral. The men dig shallow graves in the hard earth, muttering prayers too tired to reach heaven. You help when you can, but your satchel grows lighter, your own skin slick with the sweat of fever. You startle at your own cough, wonder if the sickness has taken root in you as well. The villagers watch you. Their gratitude grows thin, replaced by suspicion. One evening, as you return to your sleeping place, a spot by the fire in the smithy, the only place warm enough to keep the chills at bay, you find the priest waiting for you. He holds a sprig of dried rosemary in one hand, a hammer in the other. He wants answers, and he wants them now. What have you brought to us, stranger? His voice is not kind, but not yet murderous. You answer as best you can, explaining that you have only tried to help, that you know no more about the sickness than they do. It is the truth, but the truth is rarely enough. The priest looks at you for a long, cold moment, then shakes his head. If this gets worse, You will leave, or you will answer for it. You nod, knowing that in the end, the village always finds someone to blame. Sometimes it is the apothecary. Sometimes it is the widow with too many cats. Sometimes it is the wind itself. It makes no difference to the dead. You redouble your efforts, working until your hands ache and your eyes burn. You prepare new remedies, wild thyme, honey if you can trade for it, charcoal for the bowels. You teach the mothers to boil water, to air the sick rooms, to burn rosemary in the houses of the ill. Some listen, most do not. Habit is stronger than advice, especially when advice comes from a stranger. There are brief, fragile victories. One child's fever breaks, and she wakes, weak but hungry. An old man's cough eases, and he nods in your direction with something like respect. But for each small triumph, there are two more failures, two more funerals. You stop counting the dead, but you cannot forget the faces. Each night, you consider leaving. Each dawn, you find yourself still here. You are not sure if it is duty or inertia, compassion or cowardice. You keep hoping the pattern will reveal itself, that you will recognize the sickness and find a cure. Instead, you learn only this: there are more diseases than there are names, and some will never fit into any book. You become a shadow, moving from house to house, bearing news that is never good enough. You begin to fear the day when the villager's patience breaks. When the inevitable comes, a child dies in your arms, a woman's fever climbs until her eyes turn glassy, the whispers start. You see the glances, hear the words. He brought it with him. A curse, that's what it is. No good ever comes of strangers. That evening, you pack your things in silence. You leave behind what medicines you can spare, a handful of herbs for the next desperate soul. You do not wait for the final accusation. You slip away before dawn, feet numb, heart heavier than your satchel. As you walk into the gray morning, you wonder how many villages tell stories of a healer who came, failed, and vanished, if any remember the effort or only the ending. The road swallows you again. The forest is safer than the company of men made desperate by loss. You tell yourself you have done your best, but the words ring hollow in your ears. Another village, another plague, another lesson in the limits of hope. You wonder if you will ever feel clean again. It is an old saying among apothecaries: every cure is a poison, and every poison is a cure, depending on the hand that measures and the mouth that swallows. You repeat these words to yourself, trudging through another endless morning. The road is slick with last night's rain, the sky nothing but a damp woolen blanket pressing down on your neck. Your bag feels heavier with each step, not from weight, but from the knowledge of what it holds and what it might do. You arrive, not by choice, but by necessity, at a crossroads where a half ruined inn leans into the wind like a drunkard. Inside, a fire struggles in a blackened hearth, and a handful of villagers cluster around it, faces drawn, voices low. As you shake the rain from your cloak and set your satchel down, you sense the air is thick with something more than smoke. You recognize the look. Someone here is desperate enough to believe in miracles, or at least in the next best thing. Before long, a man with hollow cheeks and the sharp, darting eyes of a cornered animal approaches. He does not introduce himself, nor does he waste words. "My wife is dying," he says. "We have tried everything. I have silver. Give me what will save her, or at least what will end her pain." You know the story without hearing it. There is always a wife, a husband, a child, someone whose suffering has become the measure of a household's misery. There is always silver, sometimes, and there is always the question you dread. Do you have the courage to offer more than a placebo, to reach into the darker pockets of your trade? You recall your teacher's warnings. The line between remedy and poison is thin as a hair, and once crossed, it is never uncrossed. You have carried dried henbane in your kit since your first journey, along with foxglove, belladonna, a pinch of quicksilver. These are the medicines of last resort, and also the tools of murderers. They do not heal so much as silence. The temptation, always, is to use them. You follow the man to a corner of the inn where a woman lies on a straw pallet. Her skin is the color of old parchment, eyes sunk deep in their sockets, breath shallow and wet. The cough rattles in her chest like stones in a jug. You kneel beside her, take her pulse, listen to the rhythm of a body that is losing its argument with death. The husband watches you, eyes wide, fingers twitching. "Do something," he whispers. "I do not care what it is." You could offer willow bark or poppy syrup, but you know it would be a kindness measured in hours, not days. You could brew a tea of foxglove, dangerous, deadly in the wrong dose, but sometimes it stirs a failing heart for one more sunrise. You could crush a seed of henbane into a cup and let her drift quietly out of this world, free of pain, at a price. You weigh your choices, the scales balancing on the edge of compassion and survival. If you help her and she dies, they may call you murderer. If you do nothing, they will say you are a fraud. If you try and fail, there will be no difference in the end. Another body for the grave, another story for the next village. You have lived this dilemma so many times, the guilt has worn smooth in your hands. At last, you speak quietly to the husband. "There is a medicine I can give her. It may help, or it may hasten the end. The choice is yours." He does not hesitate. Give it to her. If she cannot be healed, let her sleep. You measure the dose with trembling hands, remembering every lesson and every warning. You mix foxglove and poppy, just enough. You pray for comfort. The woman drinks without protest. Her eyes flutter shut. Within moments, her breathing eases. The pain loosens its grip. For a time, she rests, and for that, the husband weeps silent tears of relief and regret. You do not know if she will wake again. You do not ask. The silver is pressed into your hand, heavy and cold, and you accept it because it is what you must do. When you leave the inn, the wind has not changed, but you feel its chill in your bones. For days afterward, the choice gnaws at you. You remember the old saying, a strong poison is sometimes the gentlest remedy. You wonder if that is wisdom or just an excuse for the things you have done. You do not know if you are healer or executioner, saint or sinner. You only know you are tired. Other villagers hear of what you did or did not do. Some look at you with gratitude, others with suspicion. You see in their eyes the unspoken question, if it were me, would you do the same? You do not answer, for there is no answer that does not taste like ash. As you walk on, you find your thoughts turning to the limits of your craft. You know that every tool in your bag is double edged. A balm for wounds may fester, a potion for sleep may become a shroud. You know that desperation turns medicine into magic and then into poison, all in the same breath. That night, you make camp by the roadside, rain tapping a slow dirge on your cloak. You lay out your remaining herbs and wonder what, if anything, is truly safe. In the end, you tuck the foxglove deeper into your kit, swear you will use it only as a last resort, though you know it is a promise you have made and broken before. You watch the fire die and listen to the quiet, too tired to pray, too numb to hope. Tomorrow there will be another sickbed, another bargain, another choice between mercy and danger. You will play your part because that is what the world expects. The line between poison and remedy is not for you to draw. It is written, as everything is, in the suffering of others. You do not notice at first that the day is different. The morning unfolds like so many others. Dull sky, the taste of yesterday's bread in your mouth, mud already creeping above your ankles as you trudge toward another nameless village. You pass a cart stuck in the mire, hear the weary curses of a farmer who barely glances your way. You trade a scrap of advice for a bite of cold turnip and move on. The village itself is a huddle of low roofs, smoke curling in blue ribbons from the chimneys. As you arrive, you sense that something is wrong. There is an airless hush in the streets, the sort that comes not from peace, but from waiting. Eyes flicker at you from behind shutters. You catch fragments of whispered conversation. He's here. Maybe he can help. No good ever comes of strangers. But she's just a child. A woman intercepts you before you reach the square. Her face is drawn and tired, but her grip is strong as she tugs at your sleeve. Come, please, she says. My daughter is sick. She is all I have left. You follow her through a warren of muddy alleys to a house that leans against its neighbor, one bad wind from collapse. Inside, the air is heavy with the sense of illness and fear. A girl lies on a straw pallet, perhaps 10 years old, cheeks hollow, hair damp and tangled. Her eyes follow you, wide and bright with fever. She tries to smile, but the effort is too much. You kneel beside her, asking the questions you always ask. When did it start? What are the symptoms? Have you seen this before? The mother answers quickly, urgently. She coughed, then came the rash. She cannot eat, cannot sleep. The priest said to pray. The wise woman tried a poultice, but it did nothing. Please, please, can you help? You listen to the child's chest, feel her brow, examine the rash that runs like spilled wine down her side. The illness is not unknown, but it is ruthless, a fever that sometimes burns out on its own, sometimes carries its victims away. You have seen it before. Sometimes what you do helps. Sometimes nothing helps at all. You prepare a tea of elderflower and thyme, hoping the old remedies might ease her suffering. You talk softly as you work, telling the child stories of forests and foxes, of the healing power of sleep. You do not promise anything. You have learned that hope, once offered, is a heavy burden. The mother presses coins into your hand, more than you expect, more than she can spare. If you help her, I will give you everything, she whispers, voice breaking. You stay by the girl's side as the hours pass. You cool her brow, coax her to sip the bitter tea. You do everything you know to do, every trick and charm you have gathered through years of wandering. The fever rises, breaks, rises again. The child's breathing grows shallower, her eyes glassy, searching for something beyond your reach. As dusk falls, the child slips into delirium, murmuring half remembered lullabies. The mother kneels beside the pallet, praying, bargaining with saints, with you, with fate itself. You feel the helplessness settling into your bones, heavier than any satchel. You know there is nothing left to try, no secret left unrevealed. Still, you stay, holding the girl's hand until her grip slackens, until her breathing quiets, until the only sound left in the room is the mother's quiet, broken sobbing. You have seen death before. It is not new. Yet somehow, this one stays with you. The mother looks up at you, not with hatred, not with blame, but with a hollow resignation. Thank you, she whispers. You did what you could. It is both a comfort and a curse. You leave the house with coins you do not want, and a weight in your chest that will not lift. Outside, the village continues as if nothing has happened. Chickens peck in the dust. Smoke drifts from the chimneys. Life goes on, indifferent to the loss inside that small, crooked room. You walk until you find the edge of the village, sit beneath a twisted tree, and stare at your hands. You wonder if you should have lied, if you should have promised the mother that everything would be all right, if only for a few more hours of hope. You wonder if you should have done more, or less, or nothing at all. That night, your dreams are crowded with fever and song, with the girl's bright eyes and the mother's broken voice. You wake before dawn, heart pounding, and know that something inside you has shifted. You feel older, and not in the way that comes with wisdom. You understand now, more clearly than ever, that your trade is not just tinctures and tonics. It is carrying the burdens that others cannot bear alone, their hope, their grief, their desperate longing for miracles. You realize, too, that every failure stays with you, accumulating like dust on your soul. The next morning, you rise and shoulder your bag as you always do, but the road feels heavier beneath your feet, the world colder. The question of who you are, healer, charlatan, or simply a witness to suffering, has never felt more impossible to answer. All you know is that you will keep walking. You have nothing else. Somewhere behind you, a mother grieves and a village returns to its routines. Somewhere ahead, another desperate family will call your name and you will answer because that is what you do and because there is no other choice. There are not many roads left that feel familiar, but every now and then the world doubles back on itself and you find yourself approaching a village you have seen before. This time, the feeling is strange. Not quite comfort, not quite dread, but something heavy that sits between your shoulders as you walk. The landscape seems smaller than you remember, the fields barer, the sky closer and more watchful. As you approach, your memories flicker, a half remembered face here, a doorway there, the echo of some past failure you cannot shake. The village is not much changed since you left it last, though everything is a little more worn, a little more hollow. Children chase one another through the mud with less laughter than before. The old men at the well watch you with a suspicion that has aged into habit. The air tastes of last year's harvest and this year's rot. You recognize a woman by her limp, a boy by the way he clutches a stick as if it is both sword and shield. They do not wave, but they do not turn away. You wonder if anyone remembers you. The question answers itself before you even reach the square. An old man squints your way and mutters to a neighbor who narrows her eyes and draws her children a little closer. The village is not large. Rumors travel faster than you ever could. You remember the last time you passed through? Was it a year or two? You treated a festering wound, eased a cough, mended a broken arm. You remember, too, the failures. A child who did not survive the winter, a mother who buried her son and then herself. You have returned not as a friend, but as a living shadow of the past. You stake out your usual place by the well. Your hands move mechanically, laying out jars, folding herbs, trying not to look for faces you half expect to see again. Some do appear, a young woman you once cured of fever, now with a baby on her hip, a gaunt farmer who once gave you a turnip in payment, now too thin to spare even that. They glance your way but say nothing. Silence is its own form of judgment. Business is slow. The villagers, wary of you and your kind, have learned to manage their ailments as best they can. They come to you only when all other remedies have failed, and even then, they pay in words more than coins. I remember what you did for my wife, one man says, and the sentence hangs in the air, unfinished, its meaning ambiguous. You nod, neither apologizing nor taking credit. Sometimes you wonder if that is the only wisdom you have gained, to let things go unsaid. You are not sure what draws you to the edge of the village as the sun slips behind the trees. Maybe it is the hope of finding some proof that you have made a difference, or maybe you are simply looking for somewhere to be alone with your thoughts. Whatever the reason, you end up beneath the crooked willow near the graveyard, where stones lean and names fade with the years. There, you meet an old woman you remember only as a voice, heard through a closed door seasons ago. She sits on a stone, her hands folded, eyes fixed on the ground. You sit beside her, saying nothing at first. The silence is heavy, but it does not frighten you the way it once might have. After a time, she speaks. You came back. Not many do. You nod. Not many want me to. She snorts, almost laughing, almost not. We are not kind to those who bring reminders, but sometimes there is comfort in seeing someone who remembers what has been lost. You say nothing because you do not know how to answer grief that has settled so deeply. She tells you of the changes in the village, the new illnesses, the bad harvest, the children who have grown, and the old who have not. She remembers the faces you tried to help and those you could not. There is no blame in her voice, only the quiet accounting of someone who has outlived both her anger and her hope. You realize, sitting there, that you have become part of the village's story, whether you like it or not. You are not the hero, nor the villain, but a thread woven into the larger fabric of their loss and survival. Perhaps that is all anyone can hope for, to be remembered, if only as a witness. Night falls, and you make your way back to the square. You are offered a place in a barn by a farmer who remembers the salve you once made for his cow's infected udder. The straw is damp, the air sharp with ammonia and mildew, but it is shelter. You lie awake, listening to the creak of the beams and the far off bark of a dog, and wonder if this is what coming home feels like. A place where your failures and small victories live side by side, forever unresolved. In the morning, you pack your things quietly. There is no ceremony, no farewell, only the ritual of the road. As you leave, a child runs up and presses a small, lopsided apple into your hand. For the next village, she says, eyes wide and solemn. You nod, and for a moment, the weight in your chest eases. You do not look back as you leave. You know the village will remember you just as you remember it, not as a savior, but as a reminder that some things cannot be healed, only endured. On the road, the world becomes nothing but chance, an endless game of dice in which you are both the player and the wager. You come to understand, after enough seasons pass, that the difference between life and death is not skill, not wisdom, not even the depth of your satchel, but the silent, arbitrary hand of fortune. Some mornings you wake with the sense that something is coming, the air charged as before a storm. Other days, disaster strikes with no warning, and you are left picking through the aftermath, searching for meaning in the rubble. You tell yourself you have learned to expect the unexpected, but the truth is you have simply learned to keep moving. It is chance that sends you to the crossroads at just the right or wrong moment. You stop to mend your boot, cursing the torn leather and your own carelessness. And in that moment, a horse-drawn wagon careens past, its wheels splitting the mud where your foot might have been. You laugh, a brittle, humorless sound, and move on, thinking of the countless disasters that have missed you by a breath, of the ones that have not. A week later, you are hailed by a woman waving frantically at the edge of a field. Her son has fallen, broken his arm. You set the bone, bind it, and for your trouble you are given a loaf of bread, still warm from the oven, a luxury so rare that you eat half of it before you even reach the next milestone. Had you not taken the old farm path that morning, you would have missed her entirely. It is nothing but chance. Sometimes chance is cruel. You enter a village at sunset, called by a desperate shout. A fire has broken out, the thatch blazing, smoke thick as pitch. You try to help, forming a bucket line, shouting orders, but by the time the flames die, the damage is done. A man sits in the road, hands raw, face blank with shock, and you can only offer him water and a useless word of comfort. You wonder if your presence was a help or a curse, if the fire would have burned less fiercely had you not been there to witness it. Your own health is another game of luck. You spend your days in the company of sickness, breathing the same fetid air, touching the same feverish flesh. Sometimes, miraculously, you remain unscathed. Other times, the smallest cut festers, the faintest chill becomes a cough that gnaws at your ribs for weeks. There is no pattern, no justice, only the fickle roll of fate. You try, for a time, to keep a ledger of your fortunes, to weigh each gain against each loss. Did that night of shelter in the barn outweigh the time you were robbed at knife point outside a tavern? Does the gratitude of a healed child balance the curse spat at your back by a grieving mother? The numbers never add up. The scales are always tipped, but you never know in which direction. It is chance, too, that brings you face to face with the limits of your trade. You are called to the bedside of a man raving with fever. His wife pleads with you, eyes wild. He was well yesterday. He was mending the fence. You check your dwindling stock. Willow bark, thyme, a single nugget of poppy resin. You choose as best you can, but nothing brings down the fever. In the morning, the man is dead, his wife's grief sharp as glass. She blames the weather, the water, the stars. She does not blame you this time, but you have not forgotten the times when you were not so lucky, when a patient's last breath was followed by suspicion, by accusation, by threats whispered outside your door. You have learned to pack quickly, to leave at night if needed, to keep your satchel ready and your stories plausible. One day you are healer, the next, scapegoat. You trust no one, not even yourself, to predict how fortune will turn. Once, long ago, you believed in skill, In the power of knowledge, you imagined that a well made poultice, a precisely measured draught, would be enough to hold back the darkness. Now you know better. The same medicine that saves one life fails the next. The same kind word that brings gratitude from one villager stirs envy in another. You can no more control outcomes than you can control the weather. You see this most clearly in the faces of those who come to you. Hope and doubt flicker side by side in their eyes, each waiting for the dice to fall. They ask for cures, but what they really want is luck, good luck, any luck at all. You provide the ritual, the bottle, the promise. The rest is out of your hands. Sometimes the results are so arbitrary that you almost laugh. A boy with a wound that should have turned septic recovers, running through the fields within a week. An old woman whose heart seemed strong dies quietly in her sleep after a cup of nettle tea. You say the same words to both families, offer the same shrug, the same polite silence. It is chance that keeps you walking, chance that spares your life, chance that takes it from those who stand beside you. You wonder if your entire existence is just a long series of accidents, a path drawn by the hand of chaos. You have stopped praying for good fortune, have stopped cursing the bad. There is only what comes and what you do with it. One night, as you sit by the embers of a dying fire, you try to remember a time when you believed that effort alone could shape the world. The memory is distant, faded, like the outline of a familiar village seen through fog. You are not bitter, not really, just tired. You tell yourself as you drift to sleep that tomorrow's luck may be better or worse or exactly the same. You will meet it as you have met every other day, with open eyes and steady hands, doing what little you can before chance decides the rest. If the road teaches you anything, it is the art of reading a face before a word is spoken. You learn, through bitter trial and many mistakes, to sense the mood of a village before you ever unpack your wares. A single glance exchanged at the edge of a field, a subtle tightening around the eyes of a woman drawing water, these tell you more than any greeting ever could. The locals have their own dialect, their own customs, their own invisible web of grudges and alliances, and you are always the outsider, the unwelcome ripple in their stagnant pond. Your first mistake, always, is assuming you are wanted. You have arrived in places where the sick waited by the road, waving you down with desperate hands. More often, though, you are met with silence, people turning away, slamming doors, or simply staring with that blank, suspicious patience unique to those who have nothing left to give and nothing left to lose. There are villages so battered by famine, fire, or plague that even hope has died, and you find yourself talking to walls and crows. When they do speak to you, it is rarely with warmth. The questions come, sometimes as accusations, sometimes as tests. Who sent you? What do you charge? What proof have you got that your medicine works? You answer as carefully as if threading a needle in the dark. Too much confidence, and you are a braggart or a con man. Too little, and you are useless or worse, hiding something. There are rules you learn. Never insult the local remedies, no matter how absurd. The poultice of pig dung, the frog in a bucket under the bed, the prayers muttered into water at moonrise. Each superstition is another villager's anchor against the storm, and you are only ever a guest in their world. If your tinctures work, it is only because they remind the patient of something their grandmother once brewed. If they do not, it is because you failed to respect the ways of the ancestors. The elders are the most dangerous, for they carry memories as sharp as knives. They remember the last apothecary, or the one before, who stayed too long, who asked too many questions, who failed to cure the wrong child. Their grudges are not easily loosened, nor are their suspicions. You nod and listen, offer small gifts, dried mint, a thimbleful of honey, never asking for thanks or trust, knowing you will not receive them. There is a dance to every conversation. You must balance honesty with performance, humility with the subtle assertion that you are not entirely helpless, not entirely to blame. You must never let them see your fear, though you carry it in your teeth and behind your eyes. The wrong word, the wrong gesture, and you may find your bed set alight or your belongings dumped in the river by morning. And then there are the moments when the mask slips, when someone, exhausted or broken, lets you see the raw animal fear beneath. A mother presses a feverish child into your arms and whispers, "Please." A man whose cough has hollowed him out to bones asks, not for a cure, but for a painless way to die. For a moment, the wall between you and them thins, and you almost feel like one of them, almost remember what it is to belong. But the moment passes. You hand over your powders, your advice, your softest words. They accept with averted eyes or stony faces, and you are once again the outsider. The next day, if your medicine fails, or simply if the illness runs its course, as so many do, you will find those same eyes filled with accusation, or worse, with indifference. The children are less guarded. They follow you through the lanes, mocking or mimicking, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with malice. One throws a stone that glances off your shoulder, another slips a frog into your bag. You smile or try to, knowing that a show of anger would only feed the game. You keep your visits brief. The longer you stay, the more the village's suspicion hardens into certainty that you are the cause of all that ails them. Each day you spend increases the risk of a theft, a beating, or simply a refusal of food and shelter. You learn to take what is offered without question, to accept both kindness and insult with the same bowed head. Sometimes there are small victories. An old woman invites you in for broth, her eyes sharp but not unkind. A child brings you a bunch of violets for luck. These moments are rare and fleeting, quickly swallowed by the grinding machinery of suspicion and need. But they are what keep you moving, what remind you that not every village is a trial, not every heart is closed. You remember the advice of an old apothecary whose name you never knew: speak less, listen more, and leave before the gratitude wears off. You try to follow it, though the world often gives you no choice. Evening finds you on the edge of another settlement, staring back at the flickering lanterns. The fields turn to black by dusk. You wonder what stories they will tell of you: charlatan, witch, failed healer, or perhaps just another name for the list of strangers who passed through and were forgotten. You walk on, still carrying the voices behind you, still rehearsing your next conversation in your mind. You hope, for once, that the next village is too tired to ask questions, too desperate to refuse your help, and that you might, for a night, sleep without weighing every word. But the road is long, and suspicion is a companion that never tires. It creeps in quietly, like the cold, hope, or rather, the absence of it. You have learned to recognize its slow retreat, the way it seeps from your bones and leaves you hollow, the way it stains every day a little grayer than the last. At first, you barely notice the change. You tell yourself it is only fatigue, only hunger, only the winter coming on. But deep down, you know you are running out, not just of food and money, but of reasons. The work you once thought noble has grown thin and sour. You go through the motions because you must. Unpack your bag, lay out your wares, mix the same bitter teas and bland powders, offer the same words of comfort that sound increasingly empty to your own ears. The villagers see it too. They sense it in your eyes, your voice, your posture. You become, to them, less a healer than a shadow moving through their midst, another sign that the world is sliding into ruin. There is a kind of numbness that settles on you, a shell grown hard from disappointment and repetition. You see it in others. The mother who no longer weeps for her sick child, the old man who watches the rain fall through his broken roof, the priest who mouths the same prayers with no conviction. You share in their resignation, though you still pretend otherwise when you have the strength. Your own body starts to betray you. You wake with aches in places you did not know could ache, and the little pains take longer to leave. Your cough lingers, your hands tremble more each evening, and your appetite grows fickle. There are days when you eat nothing, days when you eat too much, devouring whatever moldy bread or shriveled apple falls your way. You no longer savor flavors. Everything tastes of dust and memory. You begin to avoid your reflection. There are pools and puddles enough to catch your face, but you turn away, unwilling to see the lines that hunger and futility have carved. Sometimes you dream of yourself as you were, hopeful, perhaps even handsome, clever, and quick with a joke. The dream is always short, and you wake from it aching with loss, with shame at how little remains. Villages begin to blur into one another. You forget names, stories, faces, only the pain stays vivid, your own and that of those around you. You stop expecting gratitude. Sometimes you receive it, a muttered thank you, a crust of bread wrapped in cloth, a nod from someone whose pain you manage to ease for an hour or two. More often, you are met with silence or, worse, the quiet accusation in a mother's eyes as she watches her child slip away. You understand. If you could, you would blame yourself too. There are nights when you consider stopping for good. You imagine finding a place, anywhere, where you could become invisible, forgotten, a root in the earth instead of a wanderer on the road. The thought tempts you, but the world has no room for those who stop moving. You know what happens to the tired, the broken, the hopeless. The world sweeps them aside. So you keep going, less from desire than from the dull inertia of habit. Once, on a rare clear night, you sit by a fire with another traveler, an old woman who claims to have been a healer once, or maybe just a liar who needed the company. She tells you that hope is like a candle in the wind, precious, flickering, bound to go out sooner or later. The trick, she says, is not to mourn when it dies, but to keep your hands warm from its last bit of heat. You want to ask her how, but she is asleep before you find the words, snoring softly into her ragged blanket. You see more sickness, more dying, and the funerals no longer disturb you. Each grave is just another patch of earth, each wail of grief, another part of the world's endless music. You think less of healing, more of enduring. You come to measure success not in lives saved, but in days survived, in how long you can go before the next loss chips another piece from your soul. Sometimes you try to remember what hope felt like, the taste of it, the way it could fill your chest and make the world feel a little brighter. You cannot. It is gone, as if it never was. You do not mourn its passing, not in the way you mourned your first patient, your first friend, your first home. This is different, not a sharp grief, but a dull and endless ache. You pass through villages and fields like a ghost, barely noticed, barely noticing. You speak only when spoken to, work only when asked. You take payment when it is offered, and when it is not, you take nothing. You no longer argue, no longer explain, no longer plead for understanding or trust. The world owes you nothing, and you owe it even less. In rare moments of clarity, you wonder if you have become what the villagers always feared, a hollow man, a bearer of bad luck, a sign that the world is ending one small death at a time. But these moments pass. The road keeps moving, and so do you, carried forward by nothing stronger than the knowledge that stopping is worse. You hope, quietly, secretly, that something will change, that luck or kindness or mere accident will shake you loose from this numbness. But you no longer expect it. Hope is for others. You have only the road, your thin satchel, and the long, slow slide toward the end. It happens one gray morning, so quiet and ordinary you almost miss it. You pause by a stream to fill your battered flask, kneeling at the water's edge, listening to the slow burble as it winds through a hollow, worn deeper by years than you can count. The forest around you is silent, holding its breath. The birds are absent, or simply indifferent to your passing. You dip your hands in, the cold biting your skin, and for a moment the shock feels almost pleasant. A brief reminder that you are still here, still capable of feeling something. You lean closer, and your own reflection stares back at you from the trembling surface. It is not a face you recognize, not entirely. The eyes are hollowed, ringed by the shadows of too many sleepless nights. The mouth is pinched and gray, lips flecked with the residue of countless bitter draughts. Your beard, once sparse and soft, is now a tangled growth shot through with white, the skin beneath mottled with dirt and old scars. You reach to touch your cheek, and the reflection mimics you, a stranger's hand hesitating at a stranger's face. You think absurdly of all the old stories, the hero who sets out on a journey and returns changed, the prodigal son, the wise wanderer who collects truths like pebbles. No one told you that wisdom would look like this, worn, bent, so thoroughly marked by failure that hope seems a kind of madness. You smile, but the reflection does not soften. It is a grimace more than anything, a rictus of endurance. The water holds your gaze. For a long moment, you are trapped there in the silent exchange between who you were and who you have become. Memory stirs, unwelcome and sharp. You remember your first days on the road, the nervous pride, the careful optimism, the naive certainty that skill and kindness could push back the world's darkness, if only for a moment. You remember laughing with a patient over some foolish superstition, trading bad jokes for worse meals, feeling, even briefly, that you belonged somewhere. You remember, too, the faces of those you lost. A child's feverish eyes, a mother's shaking hands, an old man's slack mouth as his last breath left him. You count the failures, the moments when your medicine was not enough, when your words rang hollow, when all your effort did nothing but make you complicit in their dying. You have learned to bear this weight, but today, kneeling at the stream, it presses down with new cruelty. You ask yourself, quietly, what is left? What remains of the person who set out so many seasons ago? You have traded almost everything for the road: comfort, pride, certainty, even your name, which now feels as flimsy as the promises you hand out with every tincture. You are a creature of necessity, moving from place to place because to stop is to be lost. But in the mirror of the water, you see the cost: a face that belongs to no one, a presence that lingers like the memory of a bad dream. The sun climbs higher, breaking the surface of the stream into 1,000 shards. For a moment, your reflection scatters and reforms, and you almost look young again, almost, but not quite. The illusion passes quickly. You drink from the flask, the water sharp and bracing, and force yourself to your feet. The road waits, and the world is indifferent to your self-pity. As you walk, you try to banish the reflection from your mind, but it lingers. Every puddle, every patch of still water in the ruts of the track seems to hold a ghostly version of yourself, watching, silent, unsparing. You catch yourself rehearsing old speeches, apologies, explanations, defenses you never gave and now never will. You wonder if anyone remembers the person you were, or if even you are left to keep his memory alive. Later, in a village whose name you forget before you leave it, you catch sight of yourself in the window of an abandoned house. For a moment, the old fear returns, not fear of sickness or violence, but fear of vanishing entirely, of leaving nothing behind but a few forgotten recipes and the faint, sour smell of herbs. You feel transparent, as if you might pass through the world without leaving a mark, an echo, a stone turned in a field. That night, as you lie on the hard ground, you try to comfort yourself with the thought that survival, at least, is something, that you have outlasted hunger, cold, disease, and the world's unending appetite for suffering. You tell yourself that endurance is its own kind of victory, that there is dignity in persistence, even if there is no reward. You almost believe it, but the next morning, kneeling again at another stream, you see the same face, the same tired eyes, and you know that all the roads in the world will only ever lead you back to this, the quiet confrontation with the self you have become. You splash water on your face, scrub at the dirt, and move on. The reflection fades with the ripples, and you are alone again, just another shadow on the road, carrying the memory of 1,000 failures and the faint, inextinguishable hope that tomorrow you might still matter, if only a little. You know, at last, what it means to finish a journey without arriving anywhere at all. The road no longer promises discovery or relief. It simply stretches on, a thread woven through mud, sorrow, and the dull ache of days spent surviving. Each morning you rise and move, not out of hope, but out of habit, your feet following the ruts as if pulled by some unseen tether. This is not adventure, nor even penance. It is endurance. It is the end that never quite arrives. You have become what you once pitied and feared, the wanderer whose life is measured in footsteps and failures, whose days are stitched together by small, unremarkable acts of survival. The title of apothecary no longer feels like a calling, just a hollow word, a label stuck to the last possessions you have not yet bartered away. The pouch at your belt rattles with empty bottles and useless roots. Your hands, once steady and full of purpose, now tremble, not only with hunger, but with something deeper, the chronic fatigue of a soul run thin. Villages greet you now with the same indifference you feel for them. Children stare, unafraid, knowing instinctively that you are no threat. Adults nod or turn away, recognizing in you the shape of their own weariness. In the rare moments you are asked for help, you oblige, performing the rituals of healing without faith in the outcome. Willow bark for pain, yarrow for wounds, poppy syrup for sleep. Sometimes it works, more often, it simply passes the time until nature or luck or despair takes its course. You are invited less and less to stay the night. You grow used to sleeping outside, under the sky or in the lee of ruined walls. Each town you pass through, you leave a little more behind. An old scarf, a favorite spoon, a bit of wisdom that once seemed valuable, but now tastes of dust. You become less a figure and more a rumor, a moving shadow that is spoken of when the fever spikes or the cough will not stop. The apothecary was here. He left at dawn. The story ends there. The years are measured not in seasons, but in aches and losses. Your eyesight fades, your hearing, once so sharp to the sound of a mother's cry or a child's cough, dulls to the point where the world seems muted, mercifully or not. Your dreams become thin, haunted only by echoes, faces you cannot name, places you will never return to, failures you no longer have the energy to regret. Some days you think of simply stopping, of letting the road end wherever your legs give out, wherever hunger or cold or some quick violence decides your fate. You have seen others do it. Travelers who sit down by the wayside, who close their eyes and are, by morning, only another mound for the crows to inspect. It would be easy, you think. It would be quiet. But each morning you find yourself rising again, driven not by hope, but by the momentum of a life that has forgotten how to stop. You come one evening to a field that looks like every other. Wild grass tangled with thistles, a stone wall tumbling into the ditch, a lone tree silhouetted against the fading light. You sit beneath the tree, set down your bag, and look back along the road. Nothing but shadows and the memory of footsteps that no one will remember. You take out your last bottle, half filled with a cloudy tincture you cannot even name. You roll it in your hands, watching the light play through the glass. It is a kind of comfort, the last relic of a time when you believed in remedies, in effort, in the possibility of change. You drink a little, not because you think it will help, but because you have nothing else to do. As darkness gathers, you lie back and watch the sky. The stars emerge, cold and distant. You think of all the people you have tried to help, the ones you failed, the ones you might have saved had the world been different. You wonder if anyone remembers you, or if, when you are gone, the road will simply close behind you as if you had never passed this way. You do not fear death. You have seen it enough to know that it is only another step, another release. What you fear, if you are honest, is meaninglessness. The idea that all your wandering, all your weary work amounted to nothing. But even this fear is dulled now, smoothed away by years of repetition. In the end, you accept that life is not a story with a lesson or a tidy ending. It is simply what happens, moment after moment, until it stops. You close your eyes and let the sounds of night wash over you, the wind in the grass, the distant call of an owl, the faint, relentless heartbeat of the earth. Tomorrow, you may rise again, or you may not. It makes little difference. You have walked your road as far as you could, carried your burdens, left your small mark on a world too large and indifferent to care. And in this, perhaps, there is a kind of peace, not victory, not redemption, but a quiet surrender to the truth of things. The apothecary's road was always a lonely one, always heading toward this moment beneath the indifferent stars. You let yourself fade into sleep, not as a healer or a failure, not as a story or a caution, but as another body returned to the earth, one more nameless traveler whose life was hard, dirty, dangerous, and in its own obscure way, real.